All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started today, and hopefully a few more folks will join us. We are recording this so that we can share with others after the fact. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to, again, primarily so that everybody can see the bill numbers and it's a little easier to follow along and catch those numbers in case it's one that you want to write down. But real quickly, my name is Danielle Ezell. I'm the Executive Director for Oklahomans for the Arts, and it is a busy time of year for us. Our primary function is to represent and be your voice at the Capitol. So we are representing artists, arts nonprofits, and working on arts education advocacy day in and day out up there. So with that, I want to share with you where we are in session and what's been going on. So session started the first week of February, and we are coming up in 2 weeks on March 5th, which is the first major deadline of this session. So on that deadline, in order for bills to move forward, they have to make it out of their committee of their House of Origin. So bills that start on the House side have to make it through the House committees, and bills that start on the Senate side have to make it out of the Senate committees by March 5th. And so we've got about 2.5 weeks left for bills to be heard. And so we're getting into a time of session where it was a little quiet the first couple of weeks, and now we're seeing just a rush of bills through the process to make it through the committee hearings, because in most cases, we've only got maybe 2 more hearings for those bills to get through. And it's so important this time of year because although you don't see a lot publicly going on, there's a lot of compromise and discussions happening because we started session with over 5,000 bills or resolutions that need to be considered. And that survival rate keeps decreasing as we go through. And so typically, we only see between 500 and 600 bills making it through to the end of process, and that represents about 15 to 20% of all the bills filed. So this is an incredibly busy time of year, although it doesn't publicly usually look like it. A lot of it's going on behind the scenes in negotiations and really important discussions that are happening. So some of the bills that we have been tracking, and if there's anything that you don't see and think that we should be, please let us know. But House Bill 3147 creates the Route 66 Centennial Specialty License Plates. That passed without a problem out of committee already with a 9-0 vote. House Bill 4476 by Representative Jared Deck, and I mistyped Tammy Townley's name when I put it in yesterday. She was added as a co-author, I think a week or so ago. That also passed out of committee, but with a pretty tight vote of 5-4. And that was a bill that helps create a fund. I believe it's through the Department of Commerce for music festivals and events infrastructure in the state. So a pretty cool investment if they can get it through. And I'm not honestly sure what the challenge was in committee. I haven't had a chance to go back and rewatch that video, but if somebody knows, feel free to chime in and help me out there. 3174 by Nick Archer expands community of life development tools. That bill was interesting because it specifically mentioned placemaking in it. It has not been heard yet. Senate Bill 1241, that is a often requested bill. That is a fair and fraudulent ticketing act. There has been a lot going on behind the scenes with that bill of negotiation. So we've been getting some pushback from the secondary market resellers. That's the StubHubs and Vivid Seats of the world. They aren't too happy about this bill. They do not want to see it go through. They hired local lobbyists. And so I have been in a lot of meetings and negotiations on that bill to help hopefully get it heard. I'm up at the Capitol again today after our meeting this morning to see where we're at and whether or not we've got the votes to get it through committee. But we are still very hopeful, but can use all the support um, from folks of your personal stories, in particular from the venues. We've gotten a lot of great examples from the Civic Center and others where people have shown up where they've paid way too much or they've had fake tickets. So those examples are really important, as are the signing on of coalition partners, which we've been working hard to do. I believe that will get heard in committee next Thursday. I had hoped for this Thursday, but it's not looking good, obviously, since today is Wednesday, but it's not due. We have been working really hard on it and having a lot of negotiations and meetings. So the primary point of contention, the only point of contention in that bill right now is the price cap. So today there's a provision in the bill that limits resellers that they can't resell a ticket for more than 110% of the ticket value. And we're getting a lot of pushback on that particular provision. And so we've introduced some possible compromises there, but none have been accepted yet. So we are working through that and still feel really strongly that the price cap is an important part of the bill. So that's a little update on that. I'm happy to answer questions after we get through this if people want more information on that act. We are also tracking House Bill 4070. That was a really interesting one that created a funding mechanism for extracurricular enrichment activities that would include the performing arts in schools that needed some additional funding in that area. It has not been heard yet, and I haven't had a chance to check with the author to learn a little bit more about whether or not he thinks it will be heard. 1250, Senate Bill 1250, required school districts and charter schools in Oklahoma, every school, to provide a comprehensive list of library materials annually. Seemed a little burdensome. That thankfully has not been heard yet, and I'm hoping will not. And then another bill that is actually being heard now this afternoon that OFTA has been following closely and working with our partners on is House Bill 3021. And so that is a bill by Representative Lowe that is a cleanup bill of language around education and graduation requirements in the state. And a coalition of advocates for arts education have requested that language get added into that bill that states that students in Oklahoma will have access to arts, music, dance. And so we have provided the language, and we are hoping that that will get introduced in committee this afternoon and move forward. So 2 years ago, we lost the high school graduation requirement. This is putting back in language specifying that schools must provide access to the arts to all students. So that looked pretty positive. I'm not sure yet, though, what will happen there. Again, a lot of work behind the scenes, but we are hopeful that that will be heard today and get through committee. But they haven't filed the language, so I can't see if it's been updated yet of what will be heard this afternoon. SB 44 is a holdover bill. So that's a bill that started last session. So it started last session. It made it part of the way through the process, and that provides sales tax exemptions for nonprofits in Oklahoma today. Only certain nonprofits have sales tax exemption, and this would widen that to the majority of nonprofits. Senate Bill 289 also was a sales tax provision specifically for museums that made it part of the way through the process last year. So no movement yet on those two. SB 171, also a holdover bill. No movement on that yet. Then there's two bills that are very similar in language, both Senate bills by Daniels and McIntosh, that added some language that brought the statutory language in alignment with Governor Stitt's executive order last year that removed prohibitions on the use of state funds for religious purposes, specifically calling out the Arts Council and the Historical Society and one other entity I'm not remembering off the top of my head in their grant making process. So this is a language cleanup that then aligns with the executive order. But those two have not been heard yet, or one, a combination of those. And then 1461 modifies the sunset provision on OETA. So it extends it by 10 years, and that would help ensure OETA's long-term operations. And that passed out of committee with a 9-1 vote. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So if anybody's got questions or wants to discuss, or let me know if I've missed anything, it'll be a little easier for me to see you. But that was a super quick overview of the ones that we're tracking, understanding that, of course, there's a lot more and that I may have missed something. So does anybody have any questions or want to comment on something that they're tracking?
Danielle, I have a question about the House Bill 3021 on the access. Is there any conversation about putting the arts as a graduation requirement back in that?
We debated that, Suzanne, back and forth. In fact, the arts educators have really taken the lead on this with our support and involvement, but they have been very active, and they felt that going that direction would have been dead on arrival because of all the changes that have been made to the pathways already. And so they felt that this had a better chance of getting in and then continuing to expand from there. And so happy to share a little bit more with you about that outside of this, because it was a very deep discussion and a lot of decision making. The arts educators have been great, though. They had students up there 2 weeks ago on February 9th. They are going to be back with educators and students on February 23rd and again in March. So they are doing a great job of being up at the Capitol repeatedly this session, stressing the importance of the arts. And hopefully we've started this week to publishing on social media some of the stories that we were able to collect directly from students about their experience and why arts education is important to them. Just takes a little longer to get it published because we've got to get the releases from their parents or guardians. But we are starting to release that content to really stress the importance of the arts and arts education.
So when you talk about the arts educators, are you talking about a formal group like the Oklahoma Art Educators Association is taking this on?
Okay. Yes. Yeah. They've been very organized, and I'm so impressed with what they've been doing.
Karen? Danielle, do you have a sense yet of what kind of how this session is going to come together, kind of what the themes are yet? Because I know sometimes sessions differ from year to year tremendously. Any sense of that yet?
No, definitely budget, although it's been pretty quiet still. And I haven't had a chance to hear from Amber this week. She was in DC last week. And so we're going to catch up this afternoon. And, a lot of times the direction on the Arts Council's budget is partially set not only by what's happening in the state, but what's happening nationally. And I haven't heard yet from her what she heard from the NEA, or our congressional delegation of where that funding may be sitting going forward. So unfortunately, I don't have an update there of, I feel good about things, or no, I'm really worried that NEA funding is going to get cut and the Arts Council's budget's in jeopardy. We do know, some challenges that she mentioned on our last call specifically include the Arts Council moving back into the building that they've occupied in the past, but the request to now pay rent, as well as buy their furniture when they have to move back in. So that's adding some budget pressure there in addition to whatever overall pressure from the state. But I haven't been up there enough yet on those issues to have a good feel. I might be also have my head in the sand at the moment that I'm focused on these other things and I'm not gonna worry about the budget quite yet. Because it always is such a big lift at the end of session. Marcia?
Hey, good morning, folks. Good morning from the Panhandle. I've never known about you guys, and I've lived
Oh,
here a while. I founded Artist Incubation out here, and we do, so I'm new to your organization, but it looks like you are doing things that we need done.
yeah.
My board, I have them write letters now and then when we're prompted by the OAC, it's time to push your legislator for this
Yep.
one. But other than that, I didn't know about you guys, so I appreciate it. Looks like you're doing some good work here. We're a small organization, but we're the only art organization out here in the Panhandle. Became a 501c3 in like 2003 or 4, I believe. But we do keep our incubator certified. Sometimes we're slim, but we make it. And we're an art gallery, training center, and an incubator. And obviously, we care about the arts. But I'm a volunteer.
Yeah.
I run a business, so I appreciate what you ladies are and gentlemen are doing here. So thank you for it.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. I know it's a long trip, but if you're able to, we'd love to have you join us. Hopefully, you've seen and everybody has seen and registered. We have Arts Day coming up on April the 30th at the Capitol. That is our annual day. Marisha, for your organization, if you want, you can have a table and display literature and interact with elected officials that day. And we give
Will
you
you,
provide some training up front for that.
will you send an email reminder about that? I mean, I know that it comes every year, but if I'm in your email notifications or if I've joined you, I'll know about it, right?
Yeah, you should be getting the
Okay.
newsletter and so
Oh, there
on.
we are.
We also,
There we go.
Alyssa just put it into the chat, the link to the Arts Day registration and more information.
Okay. Thank
But
you for that.
would love to have you.
Thank you for that. And by the way, it was pretty rough out here last night. We have like a couple 100,000 acres that burned at least. A lot of people lost
Gosh,
their homes. There's been no loss of life. So praise the Lord for
that's
that. But it's kind of a rough time. All of the forestry and everything, they're trying to send help up here, and it's been an all-nighter for our firefighters.
yeah, the pictures on the news were really scary last night.
We pulled together out here though. Anyways, the arts is a sharper category as far as contrast with everything else that goes on out here.
Yeah.
So we make art out of painting a cow or a horse or whatever, and it works. And I noticed that bill for promoting where you can have con music and concerts for
Mhm.
economy, that is super cool. It should have been done forever ago.
Yeah, we know it's a sound investment in our state and in communities that definitely pays back.
Anyway, thank you again for what you do.
So there's been like as I said, there has been a ton going on behind the scenes, lots and lots of meetings and negotiations. But I am hopeful that 1241 will move through next week. I'm super excited about 3021 this afternoon and kind of reopening that door for arts education. And then we'll have the Arts Council's budget, of course, that to advocate for and that we're working on. So those are really our three primary areas that we're focused on, in addition, of course, to the other bills that I mentioned. But those are the three that day to day I am very closely monitoring and involved with. That if I would love to see the Arts Council's budget at flat or an increase if possible. That language to access to the arts being introduced and passed, and then Senate Bill 1241, which we just have some really incredible stories of the fraud and business impact that's happening to our nonprofit arts organizations at the various venues throughout the state because of ticketing fraud. So would be a big help to those providers as well as, of course, to consumers.
Where can we help you? Is there a place that you need our help?
I
right
do
now?
need, so to this morning, first thing, thanks, Karen. I can't believe I didn't even think of mention this yet. Um, I don't need you to reach out to elected officials quite yet, but I may be asking that next week before it's heard in the business committee. So be on the lookout for that. We did though, we're having some challenges getting consumer stories on the fraud. Like everywhere I go speak about this, somebody says, yeah, that almost happened to me, or I know that this happened to so and so. But people aren't giving us their stories. We're getting them from the venues, but not from individual consumers. And we think it might be just shame, right? They don't want to admit that they were duped or had a fake ticket experience. So if you know of anybody and we can get somebody on record, I would love that. So we can do some additional media and firsthand accounts. Until then, if you are on the board or involved with an organization or running an organization or venue, would love additional sign-ons to our coalition support. And then this morning, though, and this is the big call to action, we launched a web page that's a letter of support. So just asking you to sign your name that you support this bill, that then I can say to elected officials, because once you sign on there, you provide your address. And so I'm able to say, well, you have, 30 constituents who have signed on to this bill. So resharing that once we get it on social media later today. We sent out an email this morning, but we will be doing posts in the next couple of days asking people to sign that letter of support as individuals. So we're pulling about every lever that I can, short of please contact your elected official, which is important, but we try to kind of save that until we need it. And I think we're going to really need it to get it off the chamber floors when it goes before the full chamber. So. All right. Well, if we don't have any more discussion, we will go ahead and log off. I'm just kind of looking at the chats, but thank you, everyone. And we will get you the date for this next upcoming 30-minute check-in here in a few weeks. And then please, if you haven't already registered for Arts Day, please do so.
Thank you guys for all you're doing for us.
Thank you.